All right, here we are with our Viva Connections video, one that I've been meaning to do for a couple weeks now. I did Viva Topics when that first came out a month, maybe a couple months back now. Viva Insights is already out, so Viva Connections is the third one. Viva Learning is still coming. So in this video, we're going to kind of walk through all the documentation. I'm going to go through the documentation and show you exactly how to get it up, get it set up, get it running within your environment. All right, so the first thing with Viva Connections is there's some prerequisites here. If you remember when we set up Viva Topics, it was in the SharePoint Admin Center, it was in SharePoint itself, setting up a bunch of settings kind of in those various admin centers to get Viva Topics up and going. Viva Insights is really just go install it in the Teams client, go look for the App Store, install it that way. Viva Connections is a combination of Teams, it's some SharePoint, it is some PowerShell. So this was formally announced as the SharePoint, I think it was the SharePoint app for Teams, or it was something along those lines. When Viva came out, they rebranded it as Viva Connections. This does involve setting up a SharePoint page, doing some configuration in SharePoint. Then you have to go out, run some PowerShell to create the app, and then install the app into your environment. So we're going to go through that whole process here in this video, setting it up from not having anything to having it all up, running, working within Microsoft Teams. All of the links and documentation and all of that I'll refer to, I will link down in the show notes below as well. So let's get started with this. Step one of this is to set up a SharePoint home site. Microsoft recommends here that you use your SharePoint home site. You don't have to, but the recommendation is also that you use this site as the default landing experience for your users and teams. Another requirement here is that this home site, it's one of the modern sites. This can't be one of the old classic sites. If you've been on SharePoint Online for a while, you may actually still have a classic site as your SharePoint site. So let's jump over to the browser now and let's configure my environment. My home site right now is navuba.sharepoint.com in my demo environment. And you'll actually see in this environment, I still have one of the classic SharePoint sites as my home site. So the first thing I'm actually going to need to do is go set up a new site that I'm going to use for this Viva Connections. So this will actually highlight another command. And if you already have a communication site, you already have a modern site, I will I'll have a table of contents in here, links to the time code. So you can skip past this point of me setting up a modern communication site and jump right into step 2, where I start enabling global navigation and customize those navigation links. So let's go set up that communication site in a minute. So I'm going to quickly jump over here to my active sites, and I'm going to create a new communication site. This is going to be that Navuba home site. And here I have my sites. We'll just call it Navuba Home. That's fine. I am going to make myself the owner of this site and go ahead and click finish. And this is going to go out and create that new communication site that we can use it. You can see it was that quick. It's already created. If I go look down here, now I have my site /Navuba Home, brand new communication site here. The next thing I actually need to do is swap this and make this as that new default home site. So if you haven't seen site swap command yet, there is a command out there in SharePoint Online or in the SharePoint Online PowerShell module that will allow me to swap what is existing as my current home site to a new one. So if you don't have it yet, you need to go out and install the module that is microsoft.online.sharepoint.powershell. So we're going to go wait for that module to install a minute. Yes, we trust that module and the gallery. And once that finishes installing, let's just go get that command a minute. So I will show you it's star period SPO. Well, let's do this. Let's do a star period swap because it's something with swap. There we go. It's that Invoke-SPOSiteSwap commandlet. So the first thing we actually do need to do is connect to our SharePoint Online environment. So let's go connect to our SPO service, and we're going to connect to that same admin URL. So navuba.admin.sharepoint.com. This is going to prompt us for credentials to sign in with. So we'll type those in here a minute. Grab the password for that account and connect. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to invoke our SPO site swap. And I'm just hitting tab here to autocomplete these. And then there's a couple parameters. So the first one is the source URL, our target URL, and our archive URL. So let's do an SPO site swap and source URL. This is, I believe, the URL that you want to pull the site from. So what is that new site you want to take? And in this case, it's going to be that navuba.sharepoint.com/sites/ this one, that slate/navuba home. So that's going to be the source. This is the one we want to pull from. The next thing we have is our target. So where are we actually putting that site once we go out and grab it? And this one is going to be right at the root of our environment, navuba.sharepoint.com. We want this to be our new home site. And then finally, archive. Even though this says site swap, it doesn't actually swap the sites. It more takes the source, puts it in the target, takes that target, whatever's there, and gives it a new URL. So in this case, we're going to do navuba.sharepoint.com/sites/ and we'll just call it home archive. And we're going to go ahead and run this. So this does take a little bit to complete. I'm going to do some video magic here and pick up again once that site swap has been completed. All right, so that has set its run. So let's go in and look at some of these now. Let's go back to our navuba.sharepoint.com. And you can see this is now our new communication site. We also created that sites/home archive. You can see this is that old site we had there. And then if we would go to site/navuba home, it actually has a redirect in place so that if people were used to going to that site before, they actually get redirected back to that home site. So at this point in time, we have that communication site all set up, ready to go. And now we can go through these various configuration settings to get this ready. So now that you have the site that you want to use for Viva Connections, we can go set up global navigation. Okay, so the first thing we do once we have that site specified and the one we want to use, and in this case, I am going to do my root site. Again, it doesn't have to be. The recommendation is this is what you do. Before you even can enable global navigation, which is that requirement, you actually have to set this site as your home site. So even though it's at the root site, it isn't necessarily specified as that home site in SharePoint. So this is where PowerShell first gets introduced. And for those of you that skipped past my site swap, these are commands from there. So let's go ahead and clear this out. First thing you need to do if you are going to set up this home site is you need to install the Microsoft.online.sharepoint.PowerShell module. So it's simply this install module. Oh, jumped out to it. Install module, Microsoft.online.sharepoint.PowerShell, hit enter. This is going to go out. It might ask you to, if you trust the gallery, if you trust the module, yes, you trust it all, get it installed. Once it's installed, you are going to run connect SPO service and specify a URL of your admin site. So in our case, it's navuba.admin.sharepoint.com. Yours will be whatever your tenant name is, -admin.sharepoint.com. It's going to match this. If you don't know what it is, you can always just go to your SharePoint Admin Center from admin.microsoft.com. It's the same URL. So we've specified our admin URL. We're going to hit enter. It will prompt us for a login, and I already logged in once before. So we enter a username, work your school account. This is going to have to be a user that is a SharePoint admin. When we get to configuring Viva Connections, it's also going to have to be a Teams admin in order to get that app up and running. I'm going to go grab my password here, paste that one in, and now it went out and connected. The command you need to set this as a home site is Set-SPOHomeSite. And then you pick the home site URL. Again, it could be a child site. It could be any URL you want to. So I'm going to use navuba.sharepoint.com as my home site URL. Go ahead and enter. Before you set a home site, make sure you read the documentation. Here it is, aka.ms/homesite. If you do want to read that documentation, yes, I would like to continue. So now this is that home site. It can take some time to complete. Unfortunately, the value for it gets cut off, so you can't even read it all. But this is going to go out and set this site now as that home site. I'm going to do a little bit more video magic and come back once this home site has been set up, configured, and it is ready to go with me continuing forward with setting up that global navigation. So it is about 6 hours or so after I set up the home site, and I'm going to go actually backwards a little bit and address some things. This is a little odd, and I actually read the documentation a bunch of times, tested some things out further because I wanted to verify it. I have multiple Office 365 tenants. It's easy for me to do that. So when you read through the documentation that is linked down below, Viva Connections requirements will state global navigation is enabled in SharePoint. And then, interestingly enough, in the rest of the paragraph, it says it is recommended that global navigation is enabled and customized in the SharePoint app bar so that SharePoint resources can appear in Teams. What I have found out is, well, global navigation is stated as a requirement for Viva Connections. That is not the case. It is simply a recommendation that is stated as a requirement. So I've gone in, I've tested a little bit. I have one environment that has the app bar. I have global navigation enabled. All of that, I can do it there. But you can also do all of this without actually having global navigation enabled. I would still recommend, just based on these steps, that you do the setup a SharePoint home site. That is the first step-by-step guide in here, is setting that up and using that as the default landing experience for users and teams, using that for Viva Connections, not really necessary. But you can see we did go in here already, and I set up that homepage, and I can actually go in and say get SPO home site and get it, and I have that URL. So I have my navuba.sharepoint.com as the URL of my home site. You'll see I don't have the app bar down here, and while it is the home site, I also still don't have global navigation after about 6 hours or so. Doing some testing, some timing, it's hit or miss. The home site seems to take effect pretty quickly. If you're setting up a new one, it should happen within a few minutes. If you are switching from one URL to another URL for that SharePoint home site, could take up to 2 hours. As I have seen with global navigation, who really knows how long it'll take? One environment I had today, it took maybe 3 or 4 hours to get set up. This one, 6, 7 hours later, I'm still waiting for global navigation to show up. It might be due to that I don't actually have the app bar yet in this environment. So all that aside, once you have that homepage set up here, you can get that SPO home site. The next step as you walk through the documentation is actually to go out and grab the latest version of a PowerShell script that will create the app package for Viva Connections. In the documentation, there is a link to it. It takes you over to this URL right here. Something else, I'll post it in the show notes so you can get to it. It's going to auto download it. If it doesn't, you can click here to download manually. And we can go ahead and save this. And I'm just going to save it to ctemp right here. So we can go open this. Let's go ahead and extract this out. And really, this is just a single PowerShell script. There's a README, there's a license in there. However, before you go in and run this, there's a bunch of things you have to input into this script when it runs. So you need to name your app. That's kind of a given. What are you going to name your Viva Connections app package? Give it a short description, a long description. You'll see all of this in a minute. Privacy policy, terms of use. You can enter your own URL for those, or you can just take the Microsoft default for that privacy policy and the terms of use. Company name. This is what goes in the created by section. So throw your company name in there. This app was created by your company. Company website, public website, URL, just a requirement for the app. The two that you probably want to get ready ahead of time are actually two different icons it's going to prompt for. One of them is 192 pixel by 192 pixel square. This is going to be the icon for the app in the app catalog. And then that's going to be multicolor, or whatever you want to do with that, standard icon. The next one is going to be the 32 by 32 monochrome icon, 32 pixel by 32 pixel monochrome icon for the Teams app bar. So if you look in Teams and you look down the left side there, you have things like activity, chat, Teams. You're going to get a new app in there and you're going to need an icon for that. So go ahead and take your icon, make a monochrome version of it, resize it to 32 by 32 pixels. If you have those couple things ahead of time, it's going to also make this a little bit easier. So let's go back over here, our Viva Connections desktop, and I'm going to go back into PowerShell. And let's go to ctemp, and you'll actually see when I look at this directory, I have some other stuff out here for some other projects I am working on, but I have that Viva Connections, and I also created, I'm going to use an IntelliLink logo. I don't have a logo for Navuba. So there's my two icons that I created. So let's go once more into my Viva Connections, look at the directory here. We get to go in one more time because of all the extractions. So there we go. Let's do that. There's our Viva Connections desktop PS1 file. We're going to go ahead and run that. This isn't a trusted file. One thing you may run into too is if your computer tells you can't run the script because your scripts are restricted, you may need to go in and do a set execution policy and set it to unrestricted. Yes, you trust it. We're going to want to go ahead and run scripts. You don't have to do this if you already have set that. If you get an error about not being able to run an untrusted script, that's going to be your fix for it. So let's go in now and launch Viva Connections Desktop PS1. First thing, run only that you trust. Yes, I run this, or I trust it. I'm going to go ahead and run it. Be patient here. Don't hit enter or hit keys trying to get it to go because it's going to start prompting for information. So you're going to want to let it go, wait for it to go install that SharePoint PowerShell module. I already have it in use. I should have this version on here already. We're going to go ahead and give this a try and try to run it. So the first thing we use is that URL for a modern communication site. Not a team site, not any other site, modern communication site. This is the one that's recommended to be that default site, that home site that we set before. So we're just going to type in that. That was our navuba.sharepoint.com site. So that's going to be the URL. It's going to go in, actually validate that, connect to the environment to make sure this is a good site. So we're going to go log in here. I am going to go grab my password and log in with that. So it's going to go connect to our SharePoint Online environment. We have permission to do the app creation. So this is where you do need that SharePoint admin. You need Teams admin rights to complete all of this. This one's primarily just going to be those SharePoint admin rights. Name of our app. So for us, we're going to call it just our company name. This is our company app to get to our SharePoint site, all the information about our company. We'll keep it nice and simple. Short description, 80 characters or less. This is our Navuba Viva Connections app. I'm very uncreative. You can go up to 4,000 characters. This could be Viva Connections app to access our corporate SharePoint environment as an app in Microsoft Teams. I mean, something like that. This is going to go in your app catalog, so this is what people will see in that long description. Privacy policy. Again, I don't have links to privacy policies for a demo company, so I'm just going to take the default for Microsoft here. Terms of service, same thing. I'm going to take the default for Microsoft. Organization's name. Technically, my organization's IntelliGenk. We're going to pretend this is Navuba creating an internal app for themselves like you would probably do within your company. So we're going to do Navuba as our company name. And then that public website link, this one, Navuba does have a public link. So we can put navuba.com, redirects to my own website. Put that in there. This is where those icons are. So it prompts you to upload those icons. It tells you we need that colored icon, 192 pixels by 192 pixels. So let's go out to C, grab that 192 pixel colored icon and upload that one. Same thing now for our 32 by 32 pixel icon here. So we'll go out to C, temp again, and grab our 32 pixel monochrome image. Open that one. It's going to upload that. And there we go. This created an app. It created a zip file on the desktop. So if I open up Windows Explorer now and go back and look at my desktop, you will see I have this Navuba zip file here that was created on the desktop as a result of this app. So this is your Microsoft Teams app that you are now going to deploy to Teams so you can use it within your Teams client. This is where you're going to need those Teams admin rights. So let's dive over to our Teams Admin Center, admin.teams.microsoft.com. This is going to reload. We don't need to take a tour. Let's go ahead and skip this and look at our Teams app and manage apps. This is where all of our apps that you would manage within Teams are located. It's also where you add your own custom apps. Right up here at the top, you see we have an option to upload and select file. So we'll upload, select the file. Let's jump back over to our desktop and to Navuba and click here to open that app. And this is going to go ahead and upload that Teams app to our environment. If we would go in here now and search for that app, here's our app. You can see it's published, it's allowed. This is where that 192 pixel image came in. It's a custom app. We can go look at some of the details here. You can allow it, you can block it. We can go in and see about this app, scoped personal, Viva Connections, permissions for it, settings for it. There's not going to be a lot here that you're really going to have to deal with when it comes to the app. The app is there now. It can be used. I'm going to go ahead and close Teams and reopen it. And this sometimes does take a little bit once you've uploaded it and added it for it to show up within your apps. So let's click in here. It should start showing up here at the top in terms of my apps. There it was. There's that Navuba app right there. So you can see the Navuba Viva Connections app to access our corporate intranet site, or this is that long description. So I can click on this at this point in time. It'll give some of that information that we put in here, add this app, and here's that monochrome logo that we added. So right down here, you can see we have our monochrome image for our app. We could go ahead now and drag this up to the top. And this is our SharePoint site embedded in an app. And why you want this to kind of be a hub site, have that global navigation in place, is you can't really navigate around in here, get to different sites, get to different locations within SharePoint. So by making this that homepage, enabling your global navigation, you can take those home sites and make them a root hub site as well. So you can get some of the hub site navigation at the top. It's going to help you to navigate around within that Viva Connections app. So one thing you can do is you can actually go in and set up some of those app policies and configure from the Teams admin side. So this is automatically added to Teams for all your users. It's pinned, it shows up in the right location. So if you go under your Teams app and look at these setup policies, if you want to kind of roll this out slowly, you could go create a new app setup policy and deploy this just to certain users based on that app setup policy. If you do want to go ahead and just push this out at once to everybody, the process is going to be the same. It's just going to be who gets it. This global org-wide default in most environments is the one that's there and the one that most people are assigned to. If we go in here, we have the first section here is this installed apps. So we can go in, add apps, search based on this permission policy. It doesn't really matter. We just want to find that Navuba app that we had as our Viva Connections app. So Navuba now is set up as that installed app. And then we also would maybe want to add it as that pinned app. Navuba here. We can add it as a pinned app. And then we can go ahead and take this one and move it all the way up to the top here and go ahead and save this app policy. Now, anybody that's assigned to this global org-wide app policy will automatically get Navuba installed. It'll get pinned. It'll be located right at the top of Teams. This isn't going to be instantaneous. It's going to take some time to roll out to all your users, but over time then it'll start getting deployed, pushed out to all of your users. Like I said, you could also set up a custom one. So if you had one that was like your Navuba Viva Connections app, you could go in and tweak this one, have this in there, and then just assign certain people to it. So in this case, now I have a separate one. I could go manage these users. And if I wanted to push this out to just a subset of users, for instance, I just wanted to push it out to myself to start, I could do that. That will remove me from this global org-wide, put me in this policy. So just be aware if you are working with these policies and assigning people to them that users can only belong to one policy. So it's going to put you in whatever policy it is. So if you did take stuff away from this one, you would also take it away from that same user. It doesn't stack these policies on top of each other. So again, once that's done, it'll start getting deployed out to Teams. Users will start automatically having it installed and linked right at the top of their Teams. You could put it in a different location if you want to. But at this point in time, you're good to go to start navigating around in Teams or SharePoint within Teams. Use that Viva Connections app. Connections, put Yammer web parts in there, carry on conversations, put news, events, whatever you want to. Really what Viva Connections is let's take a SharePoint site, let's embed it within Teams, give users an easy way to get to that primary landing page so that you as an organization can connect with your users via SharePoint within Teams. So that's Viva Connections. Go out, look at the documentation. It's all linked in the video description below. Let me know if there's any other videos you want to see, but hopefully this was helpful, kind of walking you through how to get set up, starting to use Viva Connections, some of those ins and outs, clearing up some of that ambiguity when it comes to requirements versus recommendations, particularly in terms of that home site, the global navigation, that type of stuff. So until next time, thanks for watching.